Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This Week in Gwent, a weekly show in which we talk everything Gwent, but we also have guests now, and we have Mercernn with us today, a highly anticipated guest from the Gwent community, well known for his threads, but also streaming and all the good stuff. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fine, and I hope the people who came here today are doing fine as well. Hope it's going to be a nice interview or a nice discussion, I should say.
I feel like it's going to be a lot of good, wholesome energy because we were just talking before we went live and I felt like, the conversation was already flowing very, very well. So we'll try to keep that flow moving on into this episode. So before we start talking about everything Gwent, we'll kind of go through the news, which I have for this week. There's not a lot going on since last week. The one thing to kind of bear in mind when it comes to Gwent is New Year sale that is happening and will last until February 1st. So if you need anything Lunar New Year related, check it out in the in-game shop. So hit up Shoop for all your fixes and stuff like that. And on the Witcher side, we have a boxed edition for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Available now everywhere around the world. So if you want to get your copy or if you're just collecting boxed editions, that now is the time to do it. There's also an awesome trailer that goes with it. So if you want the full complete edition for next gen consoles, as they call them, hit up your local store. And if you already own it, you can check out the My Rewards program, in which you can get a special card back for Play Gwent if you own The Witcher 3, and a Roach Gwent card in Witcher 3 if you play standalone Gwent. So if you have both of these things in your library and you check out the My Rewards, you can have these two things for free if you own both. So check it out. Go to thewitcher.com/myrewards for details. And that's it. That's it. Easy.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I like that. Mercernn, when did you start playing Gwent for the first time? I think that's my standard question to everybody because I kind of want to know where everyone started and which point the game was in.
Yeah, so I probably have a very, very standard answer to that. And that is that I started with The Witcher 3, right? Where Gwent was introduced. And then I got into closed beta, which I actually almost missed from what I remember, because back then you had to send an email, right?
Yes.
And it would be granted access over some time. And at that time, I was in high school and I had like a burner email for all kinds of nonsense. And I rarely ever used it. And I think I applied and then I forgot about it. And I only joined closed beta like the last month of its activity or something like that, because I got the invite, but
you forgot
I didn't
about
check the
email.
Yeah. So that was a big problem. And I've pretty much played ever since. I took a shorter break when Homecoming came out because I had a bit of an issue with how the game changed for
I think a lot of people had that issue.
Yeah. But you know, it was a super drastic change. So and I think that the game has turned around, especially in the last year or two. Since The Way of the Witcher, I think the game has been exploring a lot of the things that made beta so much unique or so much fun. And even taking some designs of cards directly from beta, like V.
Yeah. That was our goal.
For example. Yeah. So I think there was this evolution of Gwent that sort of went full circle, where it rediscovered itself, and right now we're at that point. Even though there always will be some problem with Gwent, right? But in this regard, I think it returned to where it started, sort of.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea, especially we were saying in the recent developer videos, especially the ones that came out last year, but also we're kind of continuing the same trend into this year, is actually taking, older archetypes which used to exist within the game and actually bring them back to their older, let's say, glory that they used to have within the game. But that is kind of the idea, and that is kind of something that we wanted to achieve. So you're one of the early adopters of Gwent in this case. I know before even we had beta, we had like the kill the servers initiative, which was kind of where we were testing the first batch of people jumping into the game and seeing if our server infrastructure would actually handle it, and it was pretty good at that time. And then closed beta, then open beta, where we kind of opened it up to more people, since we were kind of building everything from the ground up for it. This being the first multiplayer title that CDPR came out with. So yeah, because before that, I mean, we had the Witcher Battle Arena, but that was kind of that was focused on only on the mobiles. And this one, once it launched, it was PC and consoles, so it was a different beast for sure than what we've kind of been known for.
Yeah, it must have been a huge challenge, because multiplayer games, first of all, you constantly have to keep them, although maybe like there are some exceptions, right? That some games you release in 2005 and people play them for 20 years on without any updates. Or chess, for example, right?
Yeah.
Chess.
But that's timeless. That's timeless, right? That's what you're kind of, school teaches you, your parents teach you to play. It's like also playing like with standard cards, right? It's also something that you learn very, very quickly, which is interesting because I never got into like normal cards and stuff like that, but I got into Magic very quickly. So that's kind of like a weird thing that happened.
I actually never played any card games.
Oh, okay.
Like Magic or Hearthstone before Gwent. I only got to it because of The Witcher.
Okay.
But interestingly enough, my experience from Gwent actually encouraged me to try out more of them. So since then, I've played Marvel Snap. Cards are amazing.
Yeah,
I played a little bit of Magic too. So and I know a few people who had a similar experience, that they had Gwent as their first card game, and it actually encouraged them to try out more, which is really, really cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because we've also seen, when we were kind of starting with Gwent, we saw a lot of people, especially on the like streaming side and content creator side, coming into the game from different titles. So either they played something different before and they joined us. I think there was less people maybe coming in from like the Magic crowd, but we've seen a lot of players come from Hearthstone, for example, and
Trump. And,
exactly. So they were interested about checking out the game for its different gameplay, and I feel like it is something that we all, as card game players, kind of have in common, is the fact that we want to try different card games and kind of see how we can interpret them somehow, how we, what kind of influence they have on us, but also how we interpret, what's happening within the game. And it's always something that, interested me a lot, that, whenever something comes out, and, there are card games that I don't play. I don't know why, maybe lack of time, maybe something in the initial game when I saw it like didn't interest me, but then I'm currently in a phase when I'm trying to pick up, different titles and kind of play around with them. And I'm kind of seeing like unique gameplay and changes and stuff like that. And I feel like when we were coming out also, we also brought something different and unique to the table, like no mana system, card limit when it comes to the number of cards in hand. Apart, of course, from the things that were changing in between the balance tweaks. And as you mentioned, like we had Homecoming and we had the Midwinter update and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been a long journey.
Yeah, I think that Gwent was especially... well, what would you call it? Gwent definitely was very, very unique in what it offered. Because if you compare it to all of the other games that were around the time leading the genre, I guess it was its benefit, but also its downside, because for a lot of people it was just way too different to enjoy, right? So for me personally, I think I've said that I haven't played any card games before trying out Gwent, but I've actually tried out some a little bit, like that I downloaded Oh, no, actually, I didn't. One of my friends had magic cards, and I used to play with him a little, but I just couldn't understand it, because of the mana system, because of how complicated it was. And with Gwent, it was really easy for you to grasp the basics without really thinking too much about some complicated system of resources and things like that. So I think Gwent was really good in a sense that it allowed people who normally wouldn't try out card games to get into the game. Similarly to how Marvel Snap is sort of trying to do the same, in my opinion, with people who normally wouldn't be interested in fantasy and things like that, which usually you have connected to these card games, right? So in my opinion, they are trying to get people who normally just watch Marvel films to try out card games, right? Which is a really big seller for this type of game, I think.
Yeah, and also the way that it feels a little bit more accessible due to the fact that the games are very short. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have the possibility of, once you're commuting somewhere, you download the app from the store and you kind of start playing and you're like, okay, so, one match won't take me like super long amount of time to play. So maybe I should be, trying this out and kind of seeing how I fare in it. And matches are fairly simple. Of course, there is a mana system, but there's a lot of hand holding there. So it's not like that you can do some crazy combinations. You're kind of limited. Plus the RNG aspect of the locations is kind of the thing that you need to kind of get used to, right?
Yeah, and I think that the locations are another thing that kind of helps you with not getting bored of the game. And the reason why it is so short also helps you with, the fact that it is so short also helps you if you lose a game, right?
Yeah.
If you lose a game in Gwent, then
that's
if you
a lot
had a
of
bad
time.
Day, you have to plan with that, I think. You have to get used to it.
That's true.
If you lose in Marvel Snap, well, you lost like maybe 2 minutes of your time. And you can immediately start again. The risk of burnout is so much lower than in Gwent. In Gwent, you have to prepare yourself and go into the battle and be ready for all the strikes of bad fortune.
Yeah, I remember like whenever I was ranking up to get to like a higher position, it was it was a grind. It wasn't like, oh, I could probably do this in an hour or two. It was like 5, 6, right?
Yeah.
So at least to kind of, especially higher ranks at one point, just to climb and kind of feel like, something is happening. And there was, there's a lot of back and forth. There are games like you might win 3 games and the next 3 you might lose. So you're kind of stuck in the same place. So it's kind of like a back and forth. But I kind of feel like that is also something that, what kind of draws us to card games, because you want to always better yourself and better understand the deck you're playing. Sometimes I feel like I even play better if I just swap decks and play something different. And there's this breath of fresh air that you're kind of able to bounce back and play again, and everything seems to be doing going better after that. I don't know if it's like a psychological thing, but apparently it works somehow.
It absolutely does. And sometimes when either on stream or in Discord I talk with people who are tired of some deck or they get burnout or something, and what I always recommend them is just change the smallest thing possible. Listen to music when you're playing. If you play on your mobile or on laptop, take it somewhere else. Turn on the lights, something, and it can change it.
These little
crazy,
minute things, like you would say, they can actually change the way you perceive the game and the amount of fun that you're having. Because I think the most important thing kind of is having fun, because once you stop having fun and it feels like it's becoming a chore or you're getting frustrated, it just makes it a whole lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. I think that it is a bit more complicated for people who make content for the game. If they either, they if they start playing another game, then their viewers will not like it, and they will tell them, oh, so you've left Gwent, and things like that. So for them, it is more complicated in a sense that they want to continue playing Gwent, and deep inside they love the game, but maybe they want to take a break for a week or something, right?
Which is totally fine, but I feel like it
is.
The community is kind of like holding them, I'm not saying they're holding a gun to their head, but they're pretty much holding them accountable for the fact that they need to be, playing this game, and if they play something else, like, where are you going? What are you doing?
Yeah. I think it's the people as well, that they themselves don't want to be confronted with the fact that somebody is angry at them, or that they don't get as many viewers or something, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely another thing that's super, super healthy. And you can, once again, if maybe some people who are, well, if the people are streaming, then they surely know it. But maybe people who would be thinking about streaming Gwent, or maybe are streaming a little bit, then my advice to dealing with this type of burnout is to either just take a break or to mix it up.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to play another game, just play Gwent differently.
Yeah.
When I had my hardest time and I was the most burned out, we used to do these challenges on stream, and a lot of people used to do it around the time that, for example, you try to get to pro on a new account with neutral cards only.
Yeah,
or,
that's crazy.
It's just silly, it's just silly, but it's fun. And out of a sudden, you look at the game from an entirely different perspective.
Yeah, it changes your outlook. Yeah. It changes your outlook on the game, and the game kind of feels different. I mean, doing anything to swap, even if you have like a favorite faction and you swap factions and you try to learn a new one, of course, sometimes we have this feeling that, okay, I don't want to start something new or play something different because, the learning curve, like getting into it, might be difficult in the beginning, but once you get going, you kind of are learning very quickly, and you're seeing the progression, and you're seeing that you're doing better. But yeah, the start is kind of the hardest part. But once you do, it also kind of, brings something new and fresh to the game that you've been playing for a long time, but you've been playing it only in, let's say, one possible way out of multiple ways in which you can play it.
And that's, once again, I think that a lot of people have, like, I for example, don't play with monsters at all, because monsters just never really were my thing for a number of reasons. Well, I used to play with them in beta. But
old consume.
I think my number one favorite deck with monsters from beta was, and I wonder if you remember it, Werewolves, Blood Moon, I think it was called.
Yes.
That was such an amazing deck.
Really cool deck.
I just
really cool mechanic too.
Play with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked really cool when you just spawned all the it was a boon, right?
Yes, it was a boon on the rose, and then it would buff the werewolves. Yeah.
But once again, like recently with some of the new expansions, I've been trying out monsters because I kind of like Wild Hunt, and I think was it the last one or the one before the last one? In one of the expansions, there was a lot of Wild Hunt cards.
Yeah, the one in December. Yeah.
And I actually sort of managed to get through it, and I've managed to enjoy it a lot. So it is about overcoming your expectations. I think that you will be always feeling like there really isn't much for you to enjoy, but if you don't try it, then you might be wrong for the rest of your life, right? You just have to try. You have to try even things that normally you wouldn't, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Tell me, when did you come up with the idea to actually do threads? And something happened or no?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Oh, sorry, it just disconnected for a second from me. But I think that I know what you asked me with the threads. Right?
Yeah, the idea for coming up with the threads and actually analyzing things on Twitter, because I like it a lot, and it's also something that I was talking with Vlad, that we really appreciate the amount of work that you put into these, because Twitter is kind of shorter form, at least for now, at least unless it changes ever to be, having more characters, but gave you the possibility to do threads at once. And you you're kind of very well known for that. So like the last one I think you did, which is pinned, is the one with the changes to bounty that happened this month, actually, in the beginning of this month. So when did you kind of come up with the idea that you want to kind of do these long form analysis when it comes to things that you're enjoying within the game?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate the kind words. That means a lot to me. That's generally really, really kind of you. I'm not sure if I'm that well known, or at least in a positive way, rather than oh, what is the guy posting on Twitter again? Why is he spamming me?
I think there's more to that.
Yeah, and actually to one more thing, what you've said. As you've said, you can't really make tweets with more characters than 250, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think since Twitter was... oh, Jesus Christ, sorry. Since Twitter was acquired by Elon, I think they have been considering making the tweets longer. I don't know where that is standing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it will change. I would personally love if they added an edit button, because I'm the type of person who writes something
and
then I realize, oh wait, I made a mistake. But by that time I already posted it, because I'm always excited about sharing what I've done, right? So that would be amazing. And how did I get to it? Damn, that's a good question. I actually don't remember. I think that when it's gonna be a bit of a unfortunate change of topic, but when the war in Ukraine started, I used to read a lot of threads about all kinds of information related to it. And I think at that time I realized that I really, really enjoy it, because the thing about threads is it's sort of similar as if you think about how people are capable to binge watch entire TV shows in one night, which lasts, I don't know, 10 hours, but they probably wouldn't watch a 10-hour film, right? So equally as so, you probably wouldn't read a very, very long article, but you would be capable to read a very, very long article if somebody portioned it up into tiny pieces, and with every piece, you sort of move forward. So I think that's when I got the idea. But when I'm thinking about it, well, sorry, I've been talking for a long time. I maybe if I'll stay with it, I'll say more, but I don't wanna steal.
No. It's totally fine, because I really want to know kind of when you came up with this. Like, you already answered that, but kind of what the process is in terms of like how you do it and what you focus, because I feel like it is something that is a little bit different, in the sense of normally we're seeing people not having a large attention span. They much more go to like video content and stuff like that. But Twitter is kind of built this way that you kind of threads are getting more and more popular, and people are kind of reading into them. There was even an update done by Twitter at some time where when you start a new one, you can already start making like threads for it, and you can start publishing everything at the same time, which kind of made the process a little bit easier.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, but when like so you started after the war started, you started seeing more threads, you started enjoying them yourself, and then you were like, okay, I'll start making these for Gwent.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where exactly it started, because I think there have been some. No. To be fair, when people in the Gwent community use Twitter and they want to share some long message, they usually use Twitlonger. I think I've seen a lot of Twitlongers.
Those are also popular in a long time ago. So it was whenever you wanted to do like a big announcement, like I'm quitting this game for this, and then they would do the Twitlongers. Yeah.
Here is the thing. I need to share something long. Yeah. I'm honestly not sure. I think that when the first thread that I've posted was an overview of some expansion, and I think I just at that time I was getting a bit busy with life. I didn't really have that much time. Well, I stopped making stuff on YouTube, and I didn't want to write an article or something like that, because usually people don't find about it that easily. And if they open it up and there's a lot of text, they might not even consider reading it, right? And here comes the thing with Twitter. With Twitter, you can get these bite chunk pieces or bite-sized pieces, and it's much more accessible for anyone who just has 10 minutes of time.
Yeah.
And they just want to...
Smaller chunks of information that you can start pulling in and kind of choosing like what you want to take from it.
Yeah, exactly. And now to digress, and it's gonna get a bit weird. A really, really weird digression. I don't like poetry that much, and it's gonna start making sense over time. I don't like poetry that much, but when I was in high school, I actually there are a few things that I like. For example, I like the cursed poets, Rimbaud and Baudelaire and so on and so forth.
I remember those from school.
Yeah, I think most people. But to digress even further, there's some crazy things about some of them. Like I think Baudelaire was like the punk person of the 19th century, that he dyed his hair and beard blue, and he had a pet crab and things like that, and he would walk around Paris.
Yeah, it's just going against the tide. Like whatever people are doing, you're just going totally the other way just to be in their face.
Just for the sake of being different. Exactly. Yeah. Or, for example, I really like Allen Ginsberg, but the one thing that I really, really loved, and that's something I actually used to experiment with myself, is haiku.
Oh,
and haiku, in my opinion, are very, very similar to tweets.
Yes.
Because with tweets, you have the limited space, right? And so do you have with haikus, that you have a certain amount of syllables that you have to jam the message that you want to convey into. And that's really, really important for me, because as you could have noticed from me running my mouth, I have a lot of trouble with condensing what I want to say into short messages. I just have to make it as bloated as possible.
That's totally fine. That's why you're also into streaming. I feel like people who have a lot to say are very good when it comes to streaming stuff, because you can just talk about everything for a long, long time, and and you pretty much, you keep it in the sense that, okay, sometimes maybe, you're taking too long to explain something, but I feel like the explanation sometimes adds more context to what you're trying to say, which just makes the whole thing better in this sense, right? And it kind of gives you reasoning behind it and stuff like that.
It depends what exactly the viewer is looking for, right? Because if, for example, for me, when I start talking, it gets harder and harder for me to focus on the game. So sometimes I stop, I just open up Deck Builder, and I'm catching up with the chat, and when I catch up, I return to the game. And sometimes it gets so serious for me that I can fall like 1 hour behind chat, and I'm just running my... Generally, that happened to me, I think, last month, or maybe this month, that I've managed to fall 1 hour behind chat, and I was just sitting in Deck Builder, going through chat, reading every single message, and digressing more and more and more.
Yeah, I totally understand that, because sometimes, someone asks you a question which is like so robust, and it's such a question that you can start going into multiple avenues in terms of like the way that you can interpret it, or the question is very open, and you start talking about one thing and then you digress to the other, and it kind of all revolves around the whole thing, but not.
And do you have any specific topics that perhaps trigger this for you? I know that you're into cycling, right? Or...
I mean, cycling always like causes me to talk. If it's about, I don't know, if it's about dogs and pets, I feel like I can do those discussions. Anything into like motorsports also, I feel like that kind of gets me interested. Sports only in terms of, I think cycling is like the main one. But then also card games. I feel like card games is one of those things that, especially, I feel like more in the real life than online, because online I try not to maybe like spin all the opinions, or kind of, go into tangents or try to prove people that they're right or wrong. But in real life, I really like the deeper discussions in terms of like, oh, how does this work? Or what do you think about this? Like, what would you do? I like kind of the, analysis, but also taking things apart and kind of discussing them just based off of like just, you know, simple nitpick thing out of like a one big thing. Take that out and kind of discuss it. I really enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually quite similar to what you used to do with Flake, right? That, first you had a podcast about Gwent, and then about card games in general. So that's probably exactly that.
Yeah. I would kind of like doing that because, you know, it's just taking stuff apart, and I feel like kind of with the new podcast that we have, like with Denpai, Balancing Act is kind of more general, but I feel like we kind of will be moving into the direction of going more in depth into things, because I feel like you can sometimes like take out things from a wider topic and just discuss them based off of a episode, pretty much, right?
Yeah, I guess it also depends on you finding what exactly you kind of work together with, right? Because if you're alone on stream, when you stream on your channel or me on mine, then you constantly talk yourself, but there isn't as much of an interaction with another person except for the chat, right?
Yeah.
But the chat just doesn't have as much power with changing the flow of the discussion. I think that first of all, a lot of people just want to have fun, and it's not fun for some people to type for 4 hours, right? And second of all, before you get to the message, you might be somewhere else entirely, right? Well, if you're talking to someone live, you can immediately notice, oh, this person is trying to make me think of this, or this person is asking me about that, and it immediately changes the situation.
This is why I like this form of Twig, because I get to kind of bounce ideas and ask questions with my guests, and I see that no conversation is ever the same. It depends, kind of like there are some conversations when I'm just asking the question, I'm getting the answer, but there are these where we kind of tend to digress and go into different things and discuss them more in depth. And both are kind of fine. It also depends, you know, who I'm talking to and what that person, like what that person is feeling they want to talk about, or if they're less stressed, if they're more stressed, if they want to go more in depth into their journey with Gwent, or they want to ask me questions, because there have been episodes where I was kind of, you know, I was put on the spot, and we were also talking off camera, like we were talking about Rashid, and also when we had him on, you mentioned that it was one of your like highlight episodes when it comes to the discussion, and Rashid actually came prepared to that for that episode and kind of started asking me these questions that were kind of community questions that were hot at that time, but nobody was really asking them like straight out. And I felt like, you know, having this platform on Twitch and having Twig in this form actually lets people come in and ask questions and kind of like, what do you think about this? Or, you know, it starts becoming a discussion less than me coming out and saying like, okay, this is what happened in the game. This is, you know, what we plan to do, blah, 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 blah. But getting feedback about it and actually getting, you know, instant, like, just, you know, bouncing things off of other people is something that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, you were talking about the two cases that either people want to talk a lot, right, and maybe ask you questions as well, or they are either stressed out or maybe tired, they don't want to talk too much. I think both of those in a complete extreme situation can be maybe a bit tiresome for both sides. That, you know, sometimes people can just give you answers that are just one word.
Yeah, those are very difficult.
Yeah.
But it just takes more time to pull information out of them, I feel like, because once you know, you start, because some of the people that I talk to, like, we've never met before the episode, so it's very hard for that person to instantly trust me or instantly, you know, get a flow when it comes to talking. But, you know, the longer we start talking and discussing things, it just becomes a more natural conversation.
Yeah, I guess that's also a reason for taking a little bit of time before you start the stream, right? Just to break the ice and have a little bit of banter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, the other extreme is when the other person just starts philosophizing and then you get completely lost in what is happening.
So yeah, I always try to keep it on brand, let's say, or on topic, unless the conversation in which we're going is so cool and so unique that you don't actually kind of want to, like, you don't want to say no to that,
the
right?
The passion is too strong. To stay on topic.
Yeah, you want to stay there because it's just a nice conversation. It flows very well, and you can see that, you know, there's engagement from people coming in from the chat, and they're enjoying it. So that's kind of where you kind of say, like, okay, we're gonna keep on going. We're gonna keep on going. Did you ever have, like, circling back to Gwent, did you ever have a meta which you enjoyed the most? Because least favorite, I know it was post Homecoming, but when the kind of your favorite one?
Damn, that's a really, really good question. But I don't really trust my memory that well. I'd have to think for a second. I know a lot of people really, really liked the meta right before The Way of the Witcher. That one, that's like a... Usually when I ask people, a lot of them say that they really, really like that meta. That was Deathwish Wild Hunt in Monsters, if I remember correctly. Ball, Shield Wall.
Masquerade Ball.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, the memories.
But me personally, I actually don't know. You know, for me, the thing is, I usually don't play with meta decks. I don't play with memes either. I play with, and I'm not really sure what to call it. Some people would say that it's off meta. Some people would say that it's unoptimized decks. But I never play with the most efficient things. So I usually perceive metas only from the point of view of playing against it. And well, actually, interestingly enough, I didn't hate as much when The Way of the Witcher came out. A lot of people really, really hated that meta. I only hated V, and I hated Cloggers, but the rest of the decks were actually incredibly fun to play against. So if you were lucky and didn't play against them, then that was... Wait, I think I actually know. Iron Judgment. I liked when Iron Judgment came out. That was my favorite expansion, and I like
that's a solid choice. Yeah, I feel like that one was a favorite by a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was to a huge degree because what you did with that expansion was that you've brought a lot of nostalgia from beta as well, right? Radovit was the key figure that was on the promotional material, and a lot of cards from beta came. So once again, that's the thing of returning to the old times after Homecoming.
Yeah.
And I think that I think I've heard it in some interview. Don't remember where. But isn't it true that when you were designing Syndicate, it was originally meant to be Redania, or is it just false memory?
There was an idea in the beginning for it to be like Redania only, but kind of we then thought it would be really cool to have, since there are multiple crime syndicates in Novigrad, it would be kind of good to go that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if I didn't just assume that I've heard it somewhere and it wasn't true at all. But that would be pretty interesting too. Yeah, that's I could actually see it happening. But I guess with Syndicate, you are given more of a freedom in exploring
different. Redania's kind of limited, like, because we also thought, like, okay, if we take out Redania, then we're kind of taking it out from Northern Realms, right? So we should be also doing things, I don't know, we could do Temeria only and stuff like that, but then you kind of incorporate them into Northern Realms because it makes sense, because I mean logically it's there. But yeah, there were multiple ideas in terms of, like, you know, avenues in which we could go to. But yeah, I remember Redania was like one of these solid ideas that we had, that we were kind of like, man, maybe we should be doing this, but then we kind of jumped into Syndicate because also like you know you have multiple things, like you have the Firesworn, you have all the crime syndicates and also their bosses to say it, and also kind of also having like pirates there and stuff like that, so everyone that is kind of present in the Novigradian docks. So like there's more flavor there, and more options are open in terms of like the art, the cards you can design for it, and just have more fun with it, I feel like, because Redania are kind of limited. But I feel like, you know, like when it comes to creativity and creating stuff for Redania, you could probably also branch out a little bit, you know, because the universe is big, so you can still do multiple things in it.
Yeah, I think that there definitely would be a chance for the branching out. But it definitely is easier with Syndicate, in my opinion, that you can go completely wild there and explore a completely new world of, you know, sometimes I think where the inspiration for cards that were introduced in Gwent comes from, that somebody, I don't know, watched a gangster film and they decided, in the next expansion, Syndicate is gonna have a guy who is like Robert De Niro. Let's get him in. and that's how it goes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be pretty cool, by the way. If you're still thinking about new cards, then I think Gwent needs its own Robert De Niro.
that would be an interesting one. Yeah, I feel like with every expansion that we're doing, or any card drop we're doing, we're also trying to go into certain avenues in terms of like things we wanted to happen in the game, or kind of things that we wanted to see within the game. And are kind of missing, but also there's sometimes ideas coming in from community. I know for like last year, like it was like everybody wanted Renfrey, everybody wanted Dagon, so those were kind of musts that need to happen. Although I feel like a lot of people that wanted Renfrey really regretted that decision very, very quickly, because after some time everybody's like, oh no, this card is OP, power crept, don't do it.
It's a question whether it was a blessing or a curse. In the end, I think that over time it's all of the wounds will heal for people who felt disappointed when Renfrey ended up being such a powerful card, you know, and it sort of spoiled their expectations for her. Or I wouldn't even say spoil her, or I wouldn't even say spoil, because I personally like Renfrey, and I've been defending her a lot, even though a lot of my viewers don't like her. And I think that over time, nowadays, she is closer to being just a normal card than when she came out. When she came out,
she was a must play.
She was just one of the strongest cards that I think ever came up in Gwent's history. She was just crazy overpowered.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I think she is in a good space, and that's just the time, right? Sometimes these things take time, and I think since the expectations were so high about Renfrey, it sort of came with it, right? That you didn't want to risk her being underwhelming, so she must have been a proper bang to shake up the meta.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, with any game that I've always played and interacted with, and I think Magic is also a great example of this, is like, you know, you throughout the years, you will see pretty much the power level of the cards just being brought up. And sometimes you get into a place where some cards go, let's say, you know, like 1 point higher, 2 points higher, and it's like, it's not that big of a change. But sometimes you see something that out of like this batch of cards which seem to be on the same level, there's one thing that kind of stands out, and it stands out because the power level is just so immense and so big, and you're like, okay, maybe it's time to adjust it a little bit, you know, fine tune it down because it's too crazy. And it's always a case, like you always, when it comes to balancing, it's very, very difficult, because you either do it correctly, or you think it's fine, or maybe you're like, oh, maybe if this was a little bit more, you know, powerful. Like we have the power in the provision system to kind of fine tune things and kind of make things, you know, more powerful, but also switch up the provision and kind of level it out. But sometimes the ability itself is so strong, and then you're like, this is going to be hard, to adjust without either going one way or the other. So either keeping it strong or making other things as strong as it is, and then you kind of get into power creep, or you just pretty much take it down, and then when you start nerfing things, it's always just like by a little bit, or maybe too much.
Yeah. You have to be careful so that it wouldn't slip and wouldn't grab too much of power or provisions, I guess.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking of beta, in beta there weren't any provisions.
Yes.
So as you've mentioned, how provisions have helped with balancing. I personally love the balancing system in beta, that you had limited amount of cards that you could put in your deck, right?
Golds and silvers at that time were also so you were kind of also when designing the cards, like the gold cards, of course, they had a certain power level. Like the silvers, they were a little bit worse, and then the bronzes were they were supposed to keep like a decent level. But then we also started seeing like engine decks, and some engines that were bronze became a little bit stronger than the other ones. So also keeping those things in line, but also the introduction of the provision system kind of was there because, you were not limited in terms of the amounts of golds you can have in your deck. So we had to balance it out somehow. And that was kind of the solution for it.
Yeah, but in all fairness, because in beta was the time of experimentation, right? And there were all kinds of crazy ideas, like Imlerits above, and I don't know what else. But the one thing that I liked about the balancing system in beta was that a lot of cards seem to have immediately tell you what they are capable of. So, for example, bronzes, most bronzes were kept like the super basic ones, were I think 11 points or 12, and there were no provisions, right? So you had to decide, we want to have 11 powered units for bronzes, and that's what we'll be going with. And then I guess you could move it up and down as new cards come out, and as you were mentioning the engines. But I think beta sort of could do it even without provisions, but it would be a huge problem over time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The more cards you would add, the more difficult it would be to justify having just 11 points on a card when the new cards can do 15, right? So I think that was the cool thing about the beta, that with the smaller amount of cards, there was some moment of elegance. Well, maybe there was a lot of broken cards in beta, so I don't want to. I personally liked it, but maybe elegance isn't the right word. Maybe just when I'm thinking of Imlerave and all these things. But beta was really, really cool. I think that most people are very, very nostalgic of beta for a good reason, and this is one of them. That there was some sort of balance in it. That everything was broken, but that they made things balanced.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of where we are heading with some of the new expansions as well. Like V was an incredibly impactful card, so was Renfrey, so was a lot of the new cards. But now we also have the provisions, which can keep it at bay. Yeah. So that's important.
Yeah, I feel like also when it comes to balancing the game, like from the perspective of the balance team, like they said, like the introduction of provisions actually helped them a lot, because it's much harder when you balance cards based off of just power, because like it's only one thing. And I also feel like looking into other games that I play, like you normally have a cost for a card, and then you have the power, and the things that you're kind of playing with new sets and stuff like that, you're always playing with these two things. So how much the card actually will cost you to play. On the second part, like how powerful is the card once it's being played. So if you have something that is a 1-drop and it has 2 power, that's okay. But if it's like a 1-drop and it has 4 power, then that's crazy, unless it has some additional condition, right? So it needs to be balanced out in that sense, so you're not getting too much, because otherwise everyone will just play that one thing because it gives you the most amount of power.
Yeah, and that's the blessing and the curse of Gwent, that in Gwent you don't have mana, right?
Yes.
So that's the problem with balance, or at least that in my opinion was the biggest problem with balancing in beta, that you had to work around this absence of a super impactful balancing tool. And I guess what are they called? Not resources, provisions. Provisions are sort of like mana, but in deck builder, right? That you prepay for your plays. So it's actually a really, really similar system.
Yeah. Also, getting into like the later history of the game, I feel like, you know, even if you had super strong cards at the beginning of the game, you were more incentivized to actually keep them onto later rounds, because everybody knows that, you know, there are some decks that can push like a 2-0, but normally it's a 2-1. So you need to remember that it's always a best of 3. So if you burn out on the first one and you have no juice left and you're just, you know, playing some points at the end, you're kind of like, you know, this isn't going to go in my favor in any way. So that also is kind of something that I feel like players had to learn, because normally, you know, you can't play your number one awesome, you know, win condition in the first round, because okay, you play it, you might win the round, or you might, you know, do a lot of damage or create a lot of points, but then what's going to happen in round 2 or 3? Like, there are some decks that were capable of maybe doing round 1 and then hard pass round 2 and then go into round 3 and see if you can draw into like the other cards would let you pretty much win the game. But it's always difficult to kind of balance that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that's another thing that Gwent is, or nowadays, there's a little bit of competition with Marvel Snap. Wait, actually there isn't. Well, I mean, sort of. Having a 3-round system, right? Which at the time, I think I have never seen anywhere else, because most card games are just one super long round.
Yes.
And with Gwent, you had to divide your resources into three rounds. So you could say that actually put more emphasis on player skill, rather than you having the best deck and just drawing your good cards before your opponent, right?
Exactly. So exactly. Like, you need to kind of fine tune that somehow in order to know like when to go all in and when to kind of back off of it and say like, okay, this is maybe not the round I should be going full in. Let's kind of wait and save the good cards. Maybe I can kind of go through this round and kind of maybe end on, and also like the fact of, you know, the amount of cards which you have in your hand is very important. Like, you know, winning on even is okay, but if you're winning on a card advantage, that's also good. Like, card advantage is something that I had to learn myself from Gwent, because it wasn't something that was ever present in any card game that I ever played. Like, you never think about the amount of cards in your hand. Of course, if you're playing on a super competitive format, then like your opponent will check like how many cards in hand do you have, for the sake of like, do you have any possible answers, or if you're playing something that discards card, you want to know that. But other than that, you're not really keeping track. And in Gwent, you had to keep track of the number of cards in hand, because you're like, okay, I can play one more card, we can be on even, or if I pretty much commit with one more card, I know my opponent will most likely pass, then I'll be kind of, you know, I won't be doing too well.
It's gonna get tricky. And I think that's another aspect that the Homecoming actually answered, because it's still awesome that it stayed in the game, but it still was a little bit of a problematic feature because of Silver Spice and things like that in beta, right? And in Homecoming, there was one feature that tried to answer that, and that was a limit of up to 10 cards that you can have in hand, right? And you are drawing up to that point. But I actually wonder if something like Silver Spice returned now with the limit for how many cards you can have. Well, I think that they would still be really, really hated for what they do. And most people wouldn't want to have them back, but maybe some people would actually enjoy spoiling everybody's day. You never know. No. You know, there are people like Rashid who love playing with mail and things like that. So I remember now that you kind of mentioned it. I remember, you know, it's like when you played
old Gwent, Witcher 3 Gwent, and you had the old spies would draw you 2 cards for like
Christ,
1 point or 0, like Avlak was for I think 0, and then you could decoy that somehow. And then I remember we had to turn those cards, like the ones that drew to like into gold, so you don't have the possibility to decoy them, but then you could still demote the card and decoy it in order to get the
shekels.
Yeah, that was freaking. I remember that some people that were working on design at that time were like, oh my god, and it's like, oh, this is like, we can't stop this in any way. But it was just this like ongoing thing, and it was all about card advantage. It was all about who has the biggest amount of cards in hand. And it kind of is, because the more cards you have in hand, the more utility you have in order to use it. But here also, you're kind of bound to the amount of cards you can play per turn, because you don't have a mana system, but you can only play 1 card per turn. So you need to be thinking about that all the time.
And if you get more cards, you can actually decide some important decisions within the match, like having last say, right? And things like that. So, although I guess that could be a matter in other card games too, but if you can only play 1 card per turn, as you've said, which, like, once again, that's a super unique thing that Gwent has, I would say.
Yeah.
And once again, it's the result of the fact that there isn't a mana system, right? If you had a mana system, you could play who knows as many cards if
multiple.
you have enough.
Yeah, I just can't imagine cards having costs after because it feels like something that would not work in the game. But I mean, if you didn't have provisions and you would balance things out based on power and then mana, you could. That's totally two things. It's always 2 things that you need in order to keep the balance going, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess. Sorry. No, I think I would be digressing too much, and we would never get out of it.
which is totally fine, because I feel like we went on a total balancing tangent, which is interesting. But I think we highlighted all the important things in terms of like power, provisions, the amount of cards you can play per turn, but also the amount of cards that you can have within your hand, which were kind of all the unique things that kind of pretty much solidified and identified Gwent moving forward. Since we're over an hour almost, I will start asking you a couple shorter questions. What are your plans in terms of Gwent this year? Like, what do you want to do? We know the roadmap, we know the amount of content drops this year. What are you thinking about for this year? And then when it comes to streaming and content, like, what do you want to do later on moving into 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, so I'm planning to stay with Gwent for as long as Gwent is running. I would like to be here, but also who knows how it will look like in 2024, right? Something might happen in my personal life and I won't be able to stay with the community at all, so it's really far in the future, but for as long as everything will be possible, I would like to stay with Gwent. And this year, I'm not sure if I really have anything interesting planned. I would like to be more active, because this year I've been very, very busy. It's my final year in school, so I would like to focus, or I have to focus on other things a lot as well. So I would like to make enough time for the other things too. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, and lastly, where can people follow you if they want to see your content? If someone's tuning in and doesn't know when you stream, where you stream, or where they can interact with you, you can plug some stuff away.
Well, when I'm not chatting with you here, I'm sort of active on Twitter. Like I'm trying to post once a week at least. On the username is Mercernn1, I think. And I also stream on Twitch, and my username there is just Mercernn, as you can see it on the screen, so you can find me there.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. I feel like this was one of the episodes that we'll do. Not the only one, but one of the many that we'll do. Because it was really great talking to you, and we kicked off very, very quickly into discussing things. And I feel like there's still so much more to discuss.
I actually have to mention before we end that I think we kicked off on a perfect note, just at the point when you asked me if I wouldn't be interested in joining you, when I send you the picture where I'm kissing the beer, and he immediately answered, "Oh, do you have any high quality?" And ideally without beer. And I just imagined how you're sitting in some Puritan church, no alcohol allowed, no beer, we can't have beer.
No, it's more about product placement and stuff like that, and kind of keeping
that
clean.
I get it.
But
it's
also,
fine. But I found it super funny nonetheless,
Agreed. All right, Mercernn, thank you very much. Thank you also to everybody who tuned in. We will be back next week with another guest, and most likely we'll also have Mercernn back one more time, because this was an awesome discussion. Thank you, my friend. Take care, and take care, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.